Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Sirhan on X, coming to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States of America. And here's hoping everyone had a wonderful weekend and a wonderful 16th of June of the calendar year 2025. The muggy weather has finally got here in Cincinnati. Real sweaty, real humid, real sticky. So this is what we're going to be stuck with for now for the next few months. But it's a summer. It is mid-June, and it's summer is finally coming. Finally got rid of all the cold that's been stagnant with us for the last few weeks, longer than usual. But here we are. It is the month of June, and we're about to get the muggy weather. A little bit of rain and storms today, but that is the nature of Ohio and Cincinnati weather. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful and good weekend. I'm going to go ahead and get right down to it here real quick. Today, some Cincinnati drama again. And it seemed like when you talk about Cincinnati drama, it always seems to have the equivalent of a soap opera as the equivalent of As the World Turns. Let's start with the first one that took place. It was announced yesterday that the Cincinnati Bengals have decided to reopen negotiations with contract extensions with Trey Hendrickson. Everybody here knows the timeline of it. 1 minute, he wants to stay. Next minute, he wants out. Then he wants to stay. Then his agent comes over. Then they talk about wanting to see the trade options, trying to tell the Bengals they could get a first-round draft pick, which was delusional talk by Harold Lewis, Hendrickson's agent. To now, all of a sudden, we have, at a stalemate, Trey Hendrickson's holding out. And, of course, we know Zach Taylor, the Bengals head coach, apparently sent Trey Hendrickson text that he's going to get the fine treatment if he doesn't show up to practice. Here's the problem. Now we're having this. They did follow through, and now Trey Hendrickson was fined, I believe, in excess of $105,000. So here we go with this, and that is where we have a problem here, because now Trey Hendrickson wants to be a part of the team. I mean, he said all along he wanted to stay here, and the Bengals wanted to keep him. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, it doesn't help his value when he went out in the open to say the things that he said. And now we've come full circle. And I said all along, I expect a deal to be reached when the time comes, simply because, there's no other options for either side at this point. Even before then, I said a deal was going to be reached. But the problem is, a deal that's going to be reached is going to be 2 years past its expiration date. This was something that should have been done 2 years ago. And that's where we have an underlying problem here, simply because the Cincinnati Bengals, per usual, are always behind the 8 ball on many things. And why the contract extensions of both Chase and Higgins were past their expiration date. And now we're going to have another situation with this here, because I said all along, they should have kept him. They had the chance to extend him. They only gave him a 1-year extension, which they should have done maybe 2 or 3 at that point, which made no sense. But now when Hendrickson's value went up, especially when we consider his production over the last 2 years at the edge rush position, you knew the value was going to go up. And we saw the contracts of guys like Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, and most recently Danielle Hunter. You knew Hendrickson is going to want his share, want to be paid as well as everyone else. The Bengals did their part of cap casualties to, releases and contract restructures to get to that point. And now they have the money to do it. So now what's the holdup? It was going to be done. Problem is, Hendrickson is basically going to be almost like dead weight at this point, because the last 2 years when he produced, they still had one of the worst defenses in the NFL. And when they do extend him, which I expect to happen here, not a matter of if, but a matter of when, that when might take a little bit, they're still going to have one of the worst defenses in the NFL, because the makeup of that defensive roster outside of him is just absolutely filled with guys who has no business being on NFL rosters. And we know this. I mean, he's the only one on that defense that belongs on an NFL roster, an all-pro last season with Cincinnati. And I expect him and the Bengals to come to some sort of resolution with this. Actually, I hope it happens soon because everyone here, yours truly being one of them, is a little fed up with it, and it's time for this thing to put this thing to bed and move on. Simply because enough is enough. I mean, we know the Bengals fans want to put their input. They're the reasons why this holdout is happening. And those close-paid fans like the captain and Zim, among others, the cowards that they are, they're the reasons why this is happening. Everyone, put a resolution to this. Get it over with. Let's get the season started. Please. Enough is enough. Boy, I swear, every time I want to come into a show, there's always something that breaks in my face just before I start. This was one of them. I know it happened over the weekend. But now I guess the captain wants to protect himself like an idiot on some show. I don't know what it is. Thinks he's a reason for the success. Now it's time for him to own his stuff and be the reason why the holdout is happening here with Trey Hendrickson. Another topic for another day. And it was over the weekend, another edge rusher, the draft pick of Shemar Stewart, walked out of a mandatory minicamp over the weekend out of nowhere. I mean, they say they're trying to say they're doing the right things. Zach Taylor's trying to downplay it like he's doing the right thing. Anyone with a brain knows this whole thing is a major mess. It's a bigger mess than the Trey Hendrickson situation, simply because Shemar Stewart should be lucky he was drafted overall. The guy shouldn't even been drafted, let alone drafted in the first round. Makes you wonder what the Bengals scouts were thinking. And now here we are, just like the Trey Hendrickson situation, wondering what's going to happen with this. Apparently, there's issues, of course, with the language of the contract. I'm not even going to divulge into it because I'm not a contract attorney. But apparently, that's one of the reasons why we're having this about him. Apparently, that's one of the reasons why he walked out. He essentially called the Bengals front office when it comes to that. Sit tight. I got this for you. You're going to love this. But to go back with this, you're a rookie. You shouldn't have been drafted in the first round. And what happens? You think you have all the strings you could pull on this? You're a freaking 21-year-old kid. You think you have all the leverage? You don't. I don't know who's telling you to do the things to say that you said. And I'll tell you this right now: you don't have a leg to stand on, because the Bengals front office has a leverage in this one. Everybody knows I don't give the Bengals front office the time of day for anything, simply because that's who they are. But in this case, Shemar Stewart and his agent has no leg to stand on, all because of contractual language, whatever the heck it is. I mean, whatever offer he's going to get, he'll probably get it, but he should be lucky and thankful he was drafted, because this guy is more of a project than someone who's ready to be drafted anywhere in the NFL, let alone the first round, because the Bengals could have gone many other routes to help that defense that was feeling of need, and they basically ignored all that and chose this guy. And now here we are with another mess, just like this Trey Hendrickson situation. And now this is what we're going to be stuck with. Let me just say, I want that thing to end soon. But now they're talking about possibly re-entering the draft. But the problem is he's going to have to sit out a year. And because he was lucky to be drafted, there's a chance he goes back in the draft and nobody drafts his rights, because he wasn't even near anyone's draft board. I don't even remember. I don't know who had him, but whoever did better show themselves, because it's not going to look good if he does this, especially on his end, because he has to sit out a year and his value will plummet. And people are going to take what he did here in consideration when they draft him. That is, if they go that route, which with him, who knows? The guy basically called out the front office. I get it. He does have a point, but he doesn't have a leg to stand on. Good luck, Shemar Stewart. You're welcome back if you want to come back, but the ball is in your court. It depends if you want it or not. Period. Kids these days. I mean, I was a kid once, but I never resorted to that stuff. Now I'm going to answer your question, because this comes here in Cincinnati, and this is one of the funniest things I ever encountered. Because anyone knows me knows I call out anything stupid that goes on here in Cincinnati, especially when it comes to the Bengals fans, the super fans like Zim, Captain, Kelsey Conway, among others, and the Cincinnati media. Just when you think they can't be any more stupid, they find a way to be more stupid. This was posted in their workout facility today. Actually, last week, excuse me. This is something called PHAT. PHAT, FAT. Physical, hungry, accountable teammate. That's supposedly the Bengals motto going into the season. PHAT. PHAT. Physical, hungry, accountable teammate. Do you really need to post this in a locker room? Do you really need to put this in a workout facility? I mean, we go to the facility where there's all the weights, the free weights and everything. There's a big photo called PHAT in that Bengals locker room. PHAT, FAT. Just when I can't seem to comprehend there's the Bengals fan stupidity, the Bengals media stupidity, the Cincinnati media stupidity, they find a way to get even more stupid. And then they did it again. Everyone. FAT. PHAT. I think I should put the letters DUMB, delusional, useless, moronic boneheads. That's what they are when they did this. I swear. I mean, how more can I describe this? Why would you go into a workout facility with the use of the letters PHAT, FAT, for something like this? If you need this to motivate your team, especially when you have three guys, your top three guys paying in essence of $600 million from now to the rest of the decade, you're setting yourself up for failure. This is just when I can't imagine the Bengals being more embarrassingly stupid, they find a way to do it. My goodness. This is why I stay here and they can go over there and do whatever they want, all right? Because I don't know whose idea was this to come up with this slogan. It's as I said, it's when I think of now this slogan, and now that fan base and their media is now DUMB, delusional, useless, moronic boneheads. That describes them right now after this. I don't know whose idea this was, but someone needs to be checked for CTE in the worst way possible for this ideology of the word fat. Give me a break. Why would you put this in a locker room at a training facility during training camp that you need that kind of a motivation? I get it. That's part of their slogan. I mean, supposedly it's part of their slogan. But why would you use this to make yourselves look like a bunch of DUMB, delusional, useless, moronic boneheads for something like this? Maybe I should go over there and put that on there because that's what describes them after this. I don't get it. I mean, this thing was an internet craze over the weekend. I never got a chance to sit down and look at it. Now I got a chance to look at it today. Why would you want to do? What was accomplished out of this? That's what I want to know. What was accomplished by putting the letters PHAT, FAT, outside of the locker room? I mean, I get it. I mean, you need any more motivation than having your top three guys being paid $600 million, intentionally missing the playoffs the last two seasons to get back on the track. If you were needing this, I think it says more a lot about those three guys at the end of the day. Because that $600 million, if you don't do anything from now to the end of the decade, is going to plummet and plummet fast, and your stock's going to drop worse than Enron. All I got to say after that is good luck, because you just look stupid. Just when you think Bengals fans and super fans can't get any more stupid, they find a way to get more stupid. I don't think there's a max limit to the stupid of Bengals fans. My goodness. How can you fathom and understand this? I mean, if you call this thing dumb, you're being too nice. Said PHAT means DUMB when it comes to Bengals fans and the Bengals media. Delusional, useless, moronic boneheads. Someone explain this to me, what the concept is. I don't get it. Actually, if you're on the X platform or say platforms, Google Bengals FAT. You'll see the photo. You guys can make your own judgments, okay? Because I'm done giving this guy the 5 minutes of glory. This subject's over forever. And speaking of the topic of Bengals fans and those moronic super fans and the media people, once again, we're having another idiotic conversation when it comes to quarterback debates with the use of head-to-head statistics. Look, we know Joe Burrow's a top 7 quarterback in the NFL. That is a no-brainer. Some people put him lower. What's your criteria? I'll leave that to you. But you still think because his head-to-head record against Patrick Mahomes is 3-2 and Josh Allen against Josh Allen is 2-0 is the reason for your set criteria? Please do me a favor. You in Cincinnati, you Bengals fans and you super fans, first thing you need to do is shut up. They need to get off these apps, go to a local hospital, and there's a lot of damn good ones here in Cincinnati, and I mean a lot of good ones here in Cincinnati, good hospitals. Go into an emergency room, get checked for CTE, and if you say why, you just got to tell them that we think Joe Burrow is in the same conversation as Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen when he isn't. And once you get those results, bring them to me so I can figure out what the problem is. Because this thing's gone on for 3 years, and it's enough. Head-to-head statistics in a football game is the most moronic thing you can use for any kind of player comparison. I mean, it's not boxing, it's not MMA, it's not tennis, it's not even golf. Especially the quarterback position, where the numbers are just so out of context and so broken down, numbers crunched in the most numerous ways, especially in the stats-driven era we live in now, to be the ultimate dictator of who a better quarterback is. Let me say this. If you want to use head-to-head stats, how about this? Joe Burrow is 1-8 versus Lamar Jackson. I can check that. 1-10 versus Lamar Jackson. You have Joe Burrow 0-2 versus Jacoby Brissett. Joe Burrow 0-3 versus Baker Mayfield when he was in Cleveland. 0-1 versus Russell Wilson. 0-1 versus Jaden Daniels. 0-2 versus Justin Herbert. And 0-1 versus Jalen Hurts. How stupid do you look now when you use head-to-head stats to determine who's a better quarterback? Does that even, do you know how idiotically incomprehensible that is? And I mean idiotically incomprehensible. Give me a break. Look, this is why I don't partake in these kind of debates, because it's just moronic and it's just idiotic, because there is no set criteria for it, simply because if you're going to go ahead and talk about this sort of thing, make sure you have a leg to stand on, because you don't. I mean, screenshots don't do it. Head-to-head records at the quarterback position doesn't do it. Might as well find a different avenue to take, because head-to-head stats, that can be shut down in less than a minute. I just did it. So if you have a problem with it, go to check for CTE, get the results, bring them back to me, so I can figure out what's wrong with your brain and your chronological thinking, especially when it comes to Cincinnati Bengals fans and the Bengals media. You guys are past it at this point. And just when I thought you can't max out on stupidity, first you have PHAT with that stupid photo in the locker room, and now you have this. Give me a break. Some of you guys need checked, and checked bad. You guys are just that pathetically stupid at this point. Can't wait for the season to start, because if they have another failure, I'm going to go on another rant like I did last year. Everybody knows what happened at the end of last year. Everybody knows what I said. If you think that's all I have, you have another thing coming. I'll just leave it at that. Now to the WNBA. And the hot topic is, of course, really the one that puts the ratings on the map is back. Caitlin Clark dominated Saturday with handing the New York Liberty the first loss of the season. 32 points, I think like 9 assists, 8 rebounds or something like that. The story with this was how all of a sudden the WNBA ratings just exploded. I think according to a Nielsen report, like 95% when she came back. And yet the WNBA doesn't care about it. They don't care about her. They think, all the other people are going to put their ratings on the map. To tell you the impact of Caitlin Clark in the WNBA. Because the WNBA as an organization is just a useless organization until she came in. And when she came in, she put them on the map. And apparently the WNBA intelligentsia and the aficionados there don't like it. And because of it, they're always going to give Caitlin Clark her whatchamacallit or whatever. Here's the thing. Mine's me of I can point to a lot of players in the NBA that did this. I mean, a boatload of them. But when you have an impact player like this and makes ratings, you should be fine with it. I don't get why the WNBA wants to act the way they do when it comes to Caitlin Clark. I mean, my goodness. I mean, we saw the battle she had with Angel Reese, which Angel Reese can't hold her shoelaces. I can't say that word because we're talking women's sports here. But when you have a 95% rating increase because of an impact of a player, especially in that league, and you don't like it and you find something wrong with it, maybe the problem is within you. Because Caitlin Clark is a phenomenal talent. Everyone knows this. We know what she does for that league. We know she's a problem in that league. And when she came back and hit those 3 threes from like the local area, sort of like what she used to do at the University of Iowa in college, tells you just how great and the type of talent she has. And the people in WNBA need at least time for them to get on board with it. Because when she went out, you saw what happened to the ratings. When she comes back, look at it now. I mean, nothing more needs to be said. Her impact is second to none in every single which way possible. I can go on and on about this impact down the line, which I would, because we're going to have more of people like Angel Reese, playing victim and narcissism again in the way she does. And we're going to have more discussions. But the impact of Caitlin Clark is beyond undeniable now. Anyone that wants to try and deny it doesn't have a leg to stand on. 95% increase in ratings from when she was out to when she came back for that league. That's all you need to know. Case closed. Never thought I'd live the day to talk about women's league battles, but here we are. But shout out to not just her, but all the women that play in that league. They're doing something right. And on this anniversary, 11 years ago today, maybe the greatest revenge tour in team sports history, at least one of them. It was the 2014 San Antonio Spurs after a debilitating and mind-deflating loss the year before, coming back to win the NBA championship. I bring this up because everyone knows about the iconic Ray Allen shot in Game 6. Spurs had that game in control, had it won, missed free throws, missed defensive rebounds, and we know what happened at the end. The Ray Allen three that's tied the game in overtime, and the Heat went on to win the 2013 NBA Finals in Game 7. People point to that moment as if to say that was going to be the end of that Spurs run. Little did we know that was going to be the motivational tool for head coach Greg Popovich and the Spurs. And when they came back the next season, they essentially toyed with the league. I mean, granted, their regular season record against the top 5 teams in the league at the time was a combined 2-17, but that didn't matter to them because their mission was the big prize, and that was righting the wrong of the year before to get to the NBA Finals and this time finish a job, and that's what they did. They went 62-20 in the regular season, had a tough back-and-forth series with Dallas, although I thought maybe Pop pulled them, you would say theoretically pulled them back a little bit because they were thinking on the big picture. But we know the Spurs and Mavs had a great rivalry back into the 2000s with Duncan and Nowitzki. They come back, they obliterate Portland in 5 games, beat Oklahoma City in 6 games, and that Game 6 was an instant classic, a game that went to overtime where the old big fundamental Tim Duncan hits the game-winning shot at the left block, as he always does throughout his 20-plus year career. And we saw what happened in the finals. After they tied the series 1-1, they go to games 3, 4, and 5 in Miami. It's 3-4 in Miami. And basically, Pop found a new superstar, a fellow named Kawhi Leonard, who takes his game to the next level, and the Spurs just obliterate Miami in games 3 and 4 in South Beach. They come back home to San Antonio for Game 5, and after spotting Miami an early 16-point lead, the Spurs just took over, dominated the rest of the way, and won. Actually, outscoring them the rest of the way by 34 points to get their revenge on Miami to win the NBA championship in the 2014 season. I bring this up because a lot of people thought was going to write off those Spurs as the end. They were never going to come back. That Ray Allen shot at Game 6 of the 2013 finals was going to be the one that debilitates them forever. Turned out it was a motivational tool because not too long ago, Danny Green was on the All the Smoke podcast with Matt Barnes, basically saying Pop made him watch the video every chance he get of the missed rebound and that shot to get him fired up and ready to go. And that's what happened. Essentially, Pop toyed the league for the entire season. I mean, against the top 5 teams, Oklahoma, Houston, Portland, Indiana, and Miami, they were combined 2-17 during the regular season. But that didn't matter because Pop had a bigger picture in mind. That's finishing the job. And if it meant sacrificing regular season games like that just to get to that point, he did it. And he was proven right again. Basically solidified his legacy. You can ask any the top 4 on this run: Pop, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili. What was probably their favorite championship? They'll probably tell you getting the revenge on Miami in 2014 because it's probably the most gratifying to, at least in their minds, at least erase or at least absolve what happened the year before when they had that 2013 finals won and they gave it away. So that was probably one of the great revenge tours. Even Tim Duncan, after the Spurs eliminated the Thunder in the Western Conference Finals that year, said, "We won in Miami. We have 4 more wins to get the job done. We're going to do it." He backed it up. The team backed it up, and revenge was done. A historical moment for that team. When we talk about redemption tours, that run for them, probably up there in all of team sports because nobody thought they would ever get back there again. Not only did they get back there, they got back there, finished the job, and finished it up with exclamation points. That's how you win championships. Shout out to the Spurs for that run. And before I proceed on the next topics, just want to give a birthday shout out to the 74-year-old iconic Roberto Duran, Manos de Piedra, aka Hands of Stone. I will touch on his legacy here in a second because it parlays to what I'm going to talk about. Probably the most cynical night in boxing history that took place at Madison Square Garden 42 years ago today. It was a night of June 16, 1983. It was a free TV doubleheader with the first fight being Luis Resto and Billy Collins, the main event being Davey Moore versus Roberto Duran. This had all the goods and all the bads and everything you have in boxing. This doubleheader. Well, I'll start with the good. It was free TV. It packed Madison Square Garden. Muhammad Ali and Floyd Patterson front row among many of the stars there, especially out east. You had Luis Resto versus Billy Collins. Billy Collins was a standout out of the Midwest, out of somewhere in Knoxville, Tennessee. Was supposed to be one of the big things of that part of town, simply because there was the family at the time was in poverty. They thought maybe boxing was going to help them get out of it. So they put in terms of matchmaking, they put him in against a supposedly respected journeyman fighter named Luis Resto, a rugged, tough fighter who every time he fights gives an honest effort. I use it in quotes. I'll bring it up in a second. The story of this fight, before I get to the goodies, was Luis Resto basically just out hustled Billy Collins to a 10-round decision. You think what happened this night was experience versus youth, and Luis Resto's big fight experience took over. Now we get to the fun stuff. At the end of the fight, when Luis Resto went to congratulate Billy Collins, Billy Collins' father, Billy Collins Sr., grabs the glove of Luis Resto, screams for the commissioner. The padding is out of the gloves. And now we have Donnybrook in the middle of the ring. A referee and an inspector is looking at the gloves. Luis Resto calls his conspirator, Panama Lewis, to come over, and they're watching the gloves. Panama Lewis and Luis Resto try to leave the ring. In the midst of all of that, they're cut off by referee Tony Perez. Once again, they're looking at the gloves. As they're going to the locker room, security and the inspectors are going with him to the locker room. They impound the gloves of Luis Resto after that fight. Basically, the win 2 weeks later was overturned to a no contest. Because of it, Resto was suspended indefinitely, which is basically just thrown out. And Panama Lewis, because of his history, was just flat out thrown out. Basically, what was later revealed was when they went to trial for this, a commissioner just handed the gloves to the Luis Resto camp and just left. Later was revealed in that bathroom, someone took a pair of scissors, cut the holes of the gloves, ripped 1 ounce of horse padding out of each glove out of Luis Resto. And of course, years later, it was revealed, not only that, they put plaster of Paris on his hands to where it's like the thing you wear on a cast. They put it on his hands while they were wrapping the fists while no commissioner was watching. Because of all of that, we had a real scene as a carry on for the next 3 years when they went to trial. And the biggest thing that happened during the trial was in front of the 12-man jury. They brought the gloves, and basically they felt the 1 ounce padding lost out of the gloves. And what happens? Luis Resto and Panama Lewis do time 2.5 years apiece. And while that's going on, Billy Collins, whose face was just grotesquely beat up. I mean, his face started swelling at the end of the first round in ways that never swells that fast. Both eyes were swollen to the size of golf balls, each eye. Actually, if you Google Billy Collins Jr. on the internet, you can see the photo. It's a can't miss. But after that, it was revealed he had a torn iris. He can't fight again, at least the doctors say. And basically, his life is in shambles the rest of the way. Family fights, inability to hold a job, trashing his place, distancing himself from him and his family. And the capper, of course, is what happened when he tragically drove a car off a ditch in Tennessee and took his own life 9 months after the fight. But the story with all of this is, we know this in boxing, something always happens. We talk about black eyes all the time. We talk about bad decisions. We talk about bad judging, bad refereeing, ratings manipulation like we had with one of those governing bodies back in 1999. None of that compares to what happened on this particular fight on June 16, 1983, when there was a blatant attempt to kill someone with the use of every dirty, illegal tactic imaginable. And as a result of it, the young kid Collins, because he can't fight again, got into a mental mess, substance abuse, drove himself off a cliff and killed himself because of it. And what happened as a result? Luis Resto and Billy Collins were thrown out, rightfully so. They were taken to court. They both were pled guilty to tampering with a sports contest, criminal possession of a deadly weapon, and conspiracy because of it. All of this is revealed because now it comes out they did it to please a drug dealer who bet money on Luis Resto to win this fight. And Panama Louis Blunt told him, I'll take care of the gloves. And as this event was happening, his right-hand man, Lee Black, told him to his face, you're going to get somebody killed. And that's what happened with this dark night of June 16, 1983, Luis Resto versus Billy Collins. Actually, I have for the upload, I will upload it later in more details. But every year we talk about June 16, 1983, and we talk about all the black guys in the sport. This was number one out of all of them because there was a blatant attempt to kill someone to fulfill a bet that was necessary. And it was a case of by any means necessary, and that's what happened. May Panama Louis rest in hell at the moment. Because everybody knows what the crook Panama Louis is in the boxing game. He did this a few months before with the Aaron Pryor Alexis Arguello fight. Give me the bottle of the one I mixed. Even Luis Resto said he did this in a couple of my fights. The question I had out of all of this time is why was no commissioner in the locker room watching this? Because ever since that moment, now commissioners have to watch everything. And really, they try to take this even to a civil court. And the New York State Athletic Commission tried to absolve itself out of accountability. And as a result, the whole thing was just tossed in the garbage can, the civil suit filed by the Collins family, which they had the civil suit they could file, but the New York State Athletic Commission wanted nothing to do with it, didn't even know what was going on, acted like it was nothing of significance. And they're supposed to be the highest regard of all the states in the state of boxing commissions and even all athletic commissions. At the time we talk about the standout Randy Gordon, who's as swift of this as a king. How do you let this happen? How do you let this happen? It's unreal. It's questions that probably will never get answered because the key pieces of this are either away from the fight game or no longer with us on this earth. But maybe the best thing that happened is now you have to watch this stuff. That should have been done in that locker room. No way you give the gloves and the hand wraps to someone and just leave because this happens. That's what happened when Luis Resto and Panama Louis did what they did in the Billy Collins fight 42 years ago today. It was one of the most disgusting acts, one of the most criminal acts you'll probably ever see. I mean, we can talk about all the other stuff in the sport of boxing. I get it. Bad judging, bad rankings, gross mismatches. That's nothing compared to what happened on that night of June 16, 1983. I can bring up a lot of other criminal sports stories. That probably tops a lot of them because it was a blatant attempt. Maybe the only thing worse than this was a 1919 Black Sox scandal, and that's saying a whole lot. And of course, we know the Black Sox scandal was something of its own. What happened with this fight was just egregiously purposeful with the attempt to permanently harm someone to fulfill the bit of a drug bookie. And as a result, a trainer and a fighter lost their careers because of it, and it was well-deserved. And then we have idiots like Michael Morley who tries to defend these two guys, which he doesn't have a leg to stand on either. He's irrelevant. But that's what happened on the first of this doubleheader. And the main event that night, now you want to talk about a redemption tour? Maybe on a personal level, this was for Roberto Duran when he fought Davey Moore for the junior middleweight title. We're in the year 2.5 of the post-No Mas era of Roberto Duran. If you guys know the story, the fight in New Orleans, the rematch against Sugar Ray Leonard, where he was being given a boxing lesson and just quit. All kinds of conspiracy theories came out, and basically it's stuck in Roberto Duran's head for a while after what happened in New Orleans back in 1980. Then a couple fights later, Duran fights an unknown named Kirkland Lang and basically just gets his ears boxed off. and they were calling for his head. And basically, the people of Panama who loved him and adored him basically turned on him. He basically couldn't walk on the streets. Apparently, they were throwing rocks at his place of residence. He had to get a lion just to be a tamed lion so he could walk the streets of Panama because of it, because the country of Panama was done with him. So we fast forward a couple years. He gets a title eliminator against a woefully faded Pepino Cuevas, where he just blasts Cuevas out in 4 rounds to get the title shot against Davey Moore. Moore winning the junior middleweight title. Was on a solid run to start it. I mean, was pegged as a favorite because people still don't know the mindset of Roberto Duran after no mas. It was a case of youth versus experience, but little did we know that maybe this is what was going to drive Roberto Duran to find himself again. And on this particular night, he gave Davey Moore a beating from start to finish. Fight was over in the end of the 8th round. And Roberto Duran, in dominating fashion, actually at that time it was on his 33rd birthday, winning the super welterweight championship from Davey Moore, where he just blasted Moore from start to finish. A lot of conspiracy theories about this fight. They said there was a thumb in the middle of it that swole Davey Moore's eye, possibly, but there's other ways they could have gone about this, but it didn't matter. On that night, this was the moment Roberto Duran was looking for. He got it. He milked it, took advantage of it, dominated a young upstart in Davey Moore, got the crowd on his side at Madison Square Garden, was filled with Panamanians who flew from Panama to New York City. And here he is, once again, a world champion in a 3rd weight class. I bring this up because everybody is going to always talk about no mas. And everybody's going to talk about what Roberto Duran was after no mas. I get it. No mas is always going to be a part of Roberto Duran's legacy, whether some people like it or not. But I think there's too many of you guys that's making too huge of a deal out of no mas because you guys don't see the big picture with Roberto Duran. I said his legacy was when he wiped out the lightweight division and when he won the welterweight title and from Sugar Ray Leonard the first time in Montreal, Canada. The no mas thing from that point forward was basically a case of maybe Roberto Duran hit his high point and he lived a little too freely because we know he was, lived a parties type lifestyle. That's why the Leonard camp had the Duran rematch real quick. They knew it. Inconsistent weights up and down the scales in between fights. That was known. But for that situation, he did about as good as you could possibly do afterwards. I mean, he did win the junior middleweight championship. That was moved up to challenge Marvin Hagler for the undisputed middleweight title. And at the time, he gave Marvin Hagler the toughest fight of his career. Took Marvin Hagler the 15-round distance. Gave Hagler all he could handle to where Hagler had to force himself to fight the last 3 rounds of that fight just to keep his championship. So that tells you what Roberto Duran was able to do after no mas. And yes, he had the knockout loss of Thomas Hearns, which took place 41 years ago yesterday. But we know Tommy Hearns was always going to be a matchup nightmare for Roberto Duran. Roberto Duran was never going to admit that. And he comes back 5 years after that to stun Iran Barkley to win the middleweight championship. So even though no mas is a part of Roberto Duran's legacy, he did all he could afterwards to try to get that cloud out of the way. I mean, the thing is, we have too many people who think no mas is Roberto Duran's legacy. That part isn't. Is it a part of it? Yes. Because when something like that happens on a national stage, what he did in New Orleans to Ray Leonard in that second fight in November of 1980, it's always going to be fresh in a lot of people's minds. People still have conspiracy theories about it as to why it was, but it is going to be a part of it. But doesn't mean this guy he's not an all. If you think, actually, let me back up for a second. If you think because of no mas, Roberto Duran is not an all-time great, there's something wrong with you. Because his legacy was before that fight. I mean, pull up his victories over guys like Ken Buchanan, Esteban de Jesus, and even the first fight with Ray Leonard, where he basically made Leonard fight, where he forced Ray Leonard to fight his fight, especially in the early rounds. And because of that, that was Roberto Duran. I mean, afterwards, of course, glimpses of greatness here and there when he won the 2 more world titles and gave Hagler the toughest fight of his career. But people still don't see the big picture when it comes to Roberto Duran. The guy's still a legend, no matter whatever you think. People will always talk about No Mas, rightfully so, understandably so, but that's not his legacy. His legacy is always going to be maybe the distinction of the greatest to ever fight in the lightweight division. I mean, a lot of greats in that division, but some people put him number one. I get it. Going undisputed in the two-belt era and just cleaning out that division when it happened, especially when he beat Esteban de Jesus in the second and third of their fights. Of course, when he beat Ray Leonard the first time, gave Marvin Hagler the toughest fight of his career, got some solid wins in the middle, eventually winning his last world title in 1989 when he beat Iran Barkley. Then his first world title win was in 72. His last title win was in 89. That's to tell you what the legacy of Roberto Duran is. And it was on this night, you could probably say the road to that redemption from No Mas began on the second half of that free TV doubleheader when he beat a favorite, Davey Moore, in basically Moore's backyard, because Davey Moore was in the crowd. Basically had people from New York in that crowd. But Roberto Duran just demolished him from start to finish and basically regained a championship, winning the super welterweight title. And on his 74th birthday, people still love Manos de Piedra. Some people want to use No Mas against him. I get it, but that's not the end all be all with Roberto Duran. His legacy is always going to be among, maybe you could probably say, we talk about the top 15 all time, and I'm talking all time top 15 pound for pound all time. You look at what his body of work as a whole, he's up there. Especially when he wiped out the lightweight division, basically wiped it clean. And this was a guy who feared no one, ducked no one, and gave his honest effort for basically the entire chunk of his career, especially in his championship winning years. That's why they called him Hands of Stone, because he certainly had the hands of stone. And Davey Moore's face showed it when he beat him up 43 years ago today at Madison Square Garden. Just a terrific all-time great fighter was Roberto Duran. What more can you say? I mean, iconic legend forever and ever and ever. Sort of shame No Mas had to happen. But as I said, it's not a part of his legacy, as people want to make it out to be. And I concluded this on another historical night that took place 35 years ago at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. It was a part of an HBO twin bill. The story with this one. And we're speaking of the roads back, like Roberto Duran coming back from No Mas. Two heavyweights were beginning their roads back, George Foreman and Mike Tyson. Foreman was coming back in the middle of his second career after the 10-year hiatus. And Mike Tyson was in his first fight after he lost to James Buster Douglas. It was Foreman fighting his first ranked opponent when he just obliterated Adilson Rodriguez in 2 rounds. And it was Mike Tyson getting a 1-round knockout over an irrelevant opponent. This was supposed to be a setup for a potential big money clash between Foreman and Tyson, because two rival promoters, Don King and Bob Arum, put their personal differences aside to try and get it together. It was never meant to be. It was still a big hit on a doubleheader, because when you have the two names, the caliber of Foreman and Tyson, it's going to sell. And it basically sold across not just Caesars Palace in Las Vegas, but across the HBO networks. Because if I'm correct, I think it's on a free preview weekend. I'm not sure. But the story of this was they were beginning their roads back. For Foreman, we know the story about his comeback. For Mike Tyson, even though he got a first-round knockout over an irrelevant opponent, you can almost see the post-Kevin Rooney version of Mike Tyson start to show. His biggest lockout was Henry Tillman offered next to nothing. And it's still, Tyson just obliterated him in 1 round. Basically, it was one of those things where for both guys trying to get him hyped up, maybe it was like almost like a selling point to try and get a fight to happen. And Foreman, who wanted Tyson for the longest time, and Tyson, we know how he is, especially after the loss to Buster Douglas. The thing with this one is, even though we didn't get that fight, just seeing the two guys on a card like that, regardless of the opposition, was going to get you glued to the TV, and that's what happened at the time. The difference was, as one guy was, as they began the roads back, one person hit peaks and valleys, one stayed on, and as Foreman was continuing that comeback on his second career, it gradually went up and up and up. And then, of course, it hit a high point November 5th, 1994, when he won the heavyweight title from Michael Moore. While Tyson, we know the story there, gets another win over Alex Stewart, had 2 give-and-take fights with Razor Ruddock before he faked a rib injury to Duck Evander Holyfield in 91, only to wind up in prison for 3 years. And we know what happened with him after he got out of prison. That should tell you the kind of the roads they took. And even George Foreman said it best about Mike Tyson. He finds a way to run into every brick wall he could, and basically he did. And basically, we know he caught up with him when he lost to Buster Douglas 4 months before this fight. And as not just his career, but his life was going on at that point, it was all over the place. Yes, there's some theories from the Mike Tyson fans I want to talk about in regards to winding up in prison for 3 years. Doesn't matter. Point is, after he disposed of the original Team Tyson, which was Kevin Rooney and Bill Caton, and of course the passing of Jim Jacobs didn't help. When he went to the current that team he was with Don King and all them morons, we saw what happened in the end. They were in this for the dollars because they knew Mike Tyson was a cash cow at the time, and Don King loves milking the cash cows. We know the story with him, and he did that with Mike Tyson until there was nothing left. And basically, you could say it ended. Basically, his real career. He said his career ended against Buster Douglas. Okay, but his chance to really become a heavyweight champ at that level again ended after this 2-fight series with Razor Ruddock, because that 2-fight series, Mike Tyson took unnecessary punches from Ruddock, even though he was winning basically every round. Ruddock had his moments because Mike Tyson was sitting there wanting to get hit. Kevin Rooney would not allow that had he been in Mike Tyson's corner. We know what happened at that point. He lost his discipline. He lost his focus. In the 2 fights against Razor Ruddock, his biggest lockout was Ruddock was just a one-hand fighter. And although Ruddock had his moments, Tyson still obliterated him. But still, the post Kevin Rooney version of Mike Tyson started to show piece by piece by piece. And in this doubleheader, the last thing we would expect would be Mike Tyson to be the one that is hit and miss, and Foreman will be the one to ascend to the level of the lineal heavyweight champion, which is what he did 3.5 years after this doubleheader. But the thought of having a doubleheader that featured George Foreman and Mike Tyson on HBO was one that got you open the television sets. Because the 2 biggest names at the time, I mean, even though Tyson had just lost to Buster Douglas, still was the biggest name in the cash cow in the sport, especially at heavyweight. You were still glued in. Because the unpredictability of these 2 in this doubleheader was what had, fans, it was more like a curious crowd wondering what they were going to expect. I mean, you expected both to take care of business early, which they did, but the question is how they was going to do it. I mean, I thought they both impressed that night, but it's a case of both did what they had to do. Sort of sad they didn't go at it. I mean, both guys said later on they didn't want the 80 parts of the other guy, which, it's respecting both ways. Tyson always gave Foreman his respect and vice versa, and that's how those 2 always were. But it was a heck of a doubleheader that took place 35 years ago on HBO, when HBO was the kingpin of premium television boxing, the premium networks between them and Showtime. What a battle they had for the first part of the 90s. Excellent stuff. And I'm going to wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. Actually, one last thing. I just want to give one last shout out. Give this one to George Kambosos. A lot of people giving him grief a little bit, but I'll tell you this. George Kambosos is what we want fighters to be. Ducks no smoke. I mean, yeah, he lost twice to Devin Haney, lost to Loma, and over the weekend to Richardson Hitchens. But you got to give George Kambosos credit. He got the win over Tio, and he basically catapulted it to want to fight the best. Duck no smoke, and basically, even though he lost to the top guys, fought everyone that he wanted to. Because if we're living in a sport now where people cherry pick on many things. George Kambosos says, I'll find anyone anywhere. I don't care what the dollar figure is. I don't care what the title is. I'll find anyone anywhere. And that's what he did. He shocked Tio, of course, fought Devin Haney twice, Loma and Hitchens. So he deserves credit for at least taking on the best, and you better at least acknowledge it. It didn't turn out much in the end, but he was what we want fighters to be. Something they should have been all along. Quit caring about stipulations. Just fight. That's what George Kambosos was, and he deserves nothing but props. Just want to touch down on that real quick. And that will wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. I will be back tomorrow night with a historical event that took place many years ago. And this is one that everyone was looking forward to way back when. And as always, make self-care your number one priority in life. Always take care of yourself first before you take care of anything else. If you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else matters. And if you do take care of yourself first, all the good things will come your way. Just stay true to yourself. Stay on a straight and narrow. If you missed any of this show or any of the ones I had in the past, I do have platforms on Apple, iHeartRadio, and Spotify where you can catch all of them. You're more welcome to tune into those platforms and listen. But until then, have a good rest of the night. Take care of yourselves. God bless, and enjoy the evening.